During the period 1853 to 1856, the Crimean War took place between the British and the Russian, where a young nurse named Florence Nightingale, along with a small group of friends, was providing voluntary nursing service at the battlefield. She was shocked to find that more soldiers died of preventable diseases and neglect than in actual fighting. This was painfully obvious to her, as it was to many others present at the battlefield. But unfortunately, the policy makers sitting in London did not see this as clearly. Fortunately for the soldiers and the posterity, Florence Nightingale was not just a dedicated nurse. She was also a passionate statistician at heart, one who knew how to convince others using data. She knew that data, as a mere collection of numbers, did not appeal to non-statisticians. So, she designed a way to present her data through pictures. Her graphic, which she called the wages, and which is more commonly known as the Nightingale Rose chart or the coxcomb, has gone down in history as one of the most famous data charts ever made. She included it in a privately published report which she circulated among powerful politicians. This eventually led to a significant improvement in the sanitary conditions of the army hospitals. Now let's take a closer look at the chart. Her dataset was a monthly trivariate time series collected from 1854 to 1855. The three variables were the numbers of death due to the three causes. These causes were all the preventable things, then the wounds, and the others. To depict the data, she split the central 360-degree angle of a circle into 12 equal parts and devoted one to each month. Then she scaled each sector with area proportional to the mortality rates. She did such a thing 3 times, once for each cause of mortality. Thus, in each wedge she had 3 sectors, all starting from the center and color-coded by the cause of death. Blue for the preventable ones, red for the wounds, well, that's kind of red, and the black for the others. As one can easily see, the blue sectors dominate the entire chart, driving her point home that deaths due to preventable reasons were the most significant. This is a classic example showing the power of pictorial representation of data. We use our eyes to decide about our surroundings. We are extremely adept at grasping visual patterns. Graphical representation of data just converts patterns in the data, the numerical patterns in the data, into visual patterns, which even a layman can quickly detect. Now, graphically representing data does not mean converting a jumble of numbers into a riot of colors. It must be done with 2 basic points in view: comparability and contrast. In his book, Speaking of Graphics, the author Paul Levy tells us how Nightingale achieved these using her chart. Though her original data were the numbers of deaths, she did not actually make the areas of the sectors proportional to that. Instead, she used an additional variable, the monthly size of the army, this particular column, and projected everything to mortality rates by dividing the numbers of the deaths by that estimated army size for that month. This allowed her to compare different months without having to worry about the different army sizes in the different months. Also, in a rows chart for a different mortality data, she added this dashed circle. You can see a dashed circle over here to denote the mortality in a civilian hospital at Manchester, far from the battlefield. As the dashed circle denotes annual value, she projected her monthly rates to annual rates for this particular rows chart before drawing the sectors. The idea of comparability is like bringing fractions on a common denominator before comparing them by the numerators. The next point was that of contrast. Well, in her charts, Nightingale presented two different contrasting pairs. First, between the different causes of mortality, and then between mortality in the army hospitals and that in the Manchester hospitals. Contrast appeals to the human mind. A graphical representation of data without contrast is as uninteresting as a musical piece where the same note is being played repeatedly without variation. One may, like Florence Nightingale, improvise one's own way of representing data graphically. But there are certain standard methods which every statistician should know about. And that's what we are going to learn next.